border war. Fans called it Moonshine Throwdown. I think that's the best rivalry name, an unofficial name, but the best rivalry name I've come across.
Yeah, unofficial that should become official soon enough.
Embrace it.
Grant Wells in the gun, takes the snap, takes the handoff, he takes off left, and he is all by his lonesome. Nobody within 10 yards, and Wells waltzes in for the touchdown. Marshall 16, Appalachian State 7. Grant Wells 12 yards for the score.
Next play, I love it, Brew. Liberty versus Western Kentucky. Terrell Pigram throws it up to Craig Bird Jr., who catches it over the defender for the touchdown. Woo! That's the way to get up there, boy.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown Podcast, Conference USA Championship Week. That's right. UAB is coming to Huntington to face the Herd, the Conference USA title game. A lot on the line here other than just who's going to be conference champion, bowl tie-ins, pecking order, all that good stuff's coming into play. We're going to have a really exciting episode this week, expanded, different format, a little bit of, we're shaking it up a little bit to bring you some different viewpoints and hopefully a lot more information that you would like to hear for the Conference USA Championship game. We're going to be welcoming in a couple of different guests this week. After this initial intro, Trace and Casey Knopf are going to be doing a segment. Casey making another trip back to the show this week. We love having Casey on. He always brings excellent information and stats and analysis and stuff like that. So look for Trace and Casey to give you, a really Marshall-centric viewpoint on the game. And then later I'm going to be welcoming in John Duncan, host of the Blazer Victory podcast. You can follow that on Twitter at BlazerPod. And we'll get more of a UAB perspective, and I'll give you my Marshall perspective as well. And we'll see, what everybody kind of thinks. So hang with us. It's the Moonshine Throwdown Podcast.
3 wide to the bottom of the screen. McManus at the top. And here's Cato in trouble. Cato slips out of there. Cato looks, guns it down the field, and the ball tipped into the hands, and it's a touchdown for Marshall. And Angelo Gene Lewis makes the touchdown grab off the tipped pass, but it all starts with Cato and his magical feet.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown Podcast. Boy, do we have a big one this week. This is, in my opinion, and I'm sure everybody would probably vouch for that, this is probably the biggest preview we've ever done, at least for the meaning of the football game. I mean, this game coming up here, 6 years in the making, and, it's huge. It's a huge, huge game. Marshall hosting a conference championship for the first time since 2014. Marshall, the East Division champions of Conference USA, coming in 7-1 overall. Of course, just dropped the game to Rice a couple weeks ago. Bad loss, but that's a thing of the past now. They have a whole new mindset that this is what you play for. This is a championship at home. This is what you play for as a team, and they have it right here sitting and waiting for them. East Division champion Marshall will take on the West Division champion UAB Blazers, who sit at 5-3 and 3-1 in Conference USA. They've had a lot of games canceled this year, even more than Marshall. They've only played one game in the last month or month and a half or something like that. It was against Rice. They pulled it out 21-16 on the road this past weekend. So UAB and Marshall playing for the first time since 2014, ironically, when Marshall, by the narrowest of margins, basically keeping their undefeated season alive in Birmingham. That was the season before UAB went away for a couple years before coming back on the football field. So really good game. I remember that game a lot. But, this is a matchup that I feel like Marshall fans have been waiting for a while. Marshall and UAB is kind of an intriguing matchup, especially with how competitive both teams have been over the last few years in Conference USA. This is UAB's third straight West Division championship. They won the Conference USA championship in 2018 by beating Middle Tennessee. So there's a lot at stake in this game. A big, big game. You can't ask for much more. KD will not be with us during this portion of the podcast, but he will join later on. But I am joined by Casey Knopf, who's been with us several times. We always love having Casey on. Does an awesome job. I'm sure everybody on Twitter knows him. He just does phenomenal work. And happy to have him back on here, especially for a game like this. We're both of us, I know, are just so pumped for this game. So, Casey, just gives a little bit of general thoughts so far on the game. what it means, of course, what it means, and just everything kind of general about the game. So go ahead, man.
First off, thanks for having me back. I love doing this. This is fun. Yeah, the game's big. I mean, no doubt, right? Anytime you get everybody that's not a Marshall fan or really a fan of either team chirping, it's a big game. It means something. The motto here is we play for championships. It's a fact. That's what we play for. We play for the 75 and we play for trophies. So 6 years, some would say 6 years too long, but we're back. If you're a fan, you know what that means. We've expected this. We've been wanting this for a long time. And I know the guys know what it means. This is what they've played for, back when they were lifting in the snow. Not lifting in the snow, I'm sorry, lifting, but working out in the field in the snow this off season. These guys didn't go home because of COVID, all to win a championship.
Yep.
So to make it understood how big this game is, it's huge. I would say this championship under the year that we're in, COVID, and then also the 50th anniversary of the plane crash, this could be the biggest championship game Marshall's ever played in.
You put it perfectly there. I mean, this is what you play for. This is every team at any level of college football. This is what you head into a year wanting to do: win a conference championship. Period. That's how it is. Everybody wants it. I mean, it's a big deal, especially for Marshall. I mean, Marshall's a program that really prides itself on this kind of stuff. Been a while, like you said. I mean, we both said, like everybody said, it's been a hot minute since the Herds played for a title. They have it back here with a chance to win another conference title for the second time in Conference USA. I mean, it's just a big deal. I mean, especially from the 2020 wild year we had, probably the weirdest college football season, the most unorthodox college football season of all time. I mean, Marshall's done a fantastic job of going through that relatively unscathed as far as COVID goes. I mean, every team's going to have a little bit of problems. Marshall has had next to no issue with COVID. Knock on wood. We love to see how responsible they're handling it and everything. And I mean, as far as the Charlotte game being canceled, I mean, I feel like most of that wasn't even. I mean, this might just be me, but I feel like most of that wasn't even really because of COVID. So I mean, it's a good thing that they've handled as well as they have. Hopefully they're a little healthy now because they were pretty decimated in that Rice game, especially on the line. I mean, hopefully they get some guys back. Their statuses, of course, it's hard to know unless you're really, really close to the program, like really close. So, I mean, it does. But UAB's going to be down players too. Marshall's probably going to be down some players. You just have to play through it. I mean, this isn't your average year. This is 2020. So play through it and then just that's what you can do. But looking at it a little closer as far as an X's and O's standpoint, UAB offensively, we know what they do well. They run the ball. That's their MO. Their passing numbers kind of leave a little bit to be desired. I mean, they have two quarterbacks that they played this year, and both of their passing yards combined isn't really close to Grant Wells' passing yards. So, I mean, they don't really throw the ball a whole lot. I mean, they can, but they're more of a running team. They're kind of like the West Division version of Marshall. Like, they want to be really physical and pound the rock, and they want to just out tough you really. So I mean, look at Marshall on the defense side of the equation. They've done an excellent job this year stopping the run, one of the top 2 or 3 in the nation against the run. So Casey, what do you think about that matchup? What do you think Marshall defense is going to want to do against this UAB offense?
Yeah, like you said, stop the run. I mean, which has kind of been our, thing all year, right? I mean, we don't give up yards and we don't give up points. So, I think a key takeaway that'll lead huge into this game with UAB. Yes, we got beat 20-0 by Rice, but a pick 6 was in there. We only gave up 13 points.
Okay.
I think there's a lot to be said about that. When your offense can't get anything going, you're constantly going back on the field, and you're constantly winning the battle. I mean, to hold a team to 13 points through 4 quarters when you're literally getting no offensive effort, really, that says something. So like you said, I mean, it's going to be who can out-physical who. And when you look at something like that, right, you have to assume the offense is going to be better this week. When you look at that, though, and you're saying who's going to out-physical, who's going to be able to last, that Marshall defense is tough, man. So to me, and I say this pretty much every time I'm on here, it's play your game. They do. They're so well coached, man. They're so well coached. It's unbelievable. So I think they go out, they play their game, stop the run. Stop the run. Don't let them get anything going on the ground. And just, to me, any quarterback that tries to pass against Marshall has to be scared. One, we've got so many DBs that make plays. But then on top of that, you got Hodge and you got Cumberlander on the edge. You've got Tavante in the middle who can blitz at any point. Like, to me, every week the motto is stop the run, make them beat us through the air, and it's no different this week. So,
yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, I was thinking a couple more things while you mentioned that Rice game. Rice offensively only scored 13 points, but I would venture to say even the legit points that they scored, pretty much all of them are off of turnovers. I mean, the defense really in that circumstance, when Marshall's offense is spotting UAB 5 extra possessions, they really could have done a whole lot more than that. So, I mean, the defense, I mean, they brought it. Even though they lost the game, they didn't lose the game. Even though Marshall lost the game, they still brought it. There's no doubt about it. And, I mean, I think that really bodes itself well for this game because I don't think the defense is going to play the game. I think they're going to be as sharp as they have been all year. I mean, they're going to have to be because, I mean, like I said, UAB, they're going to challenge it. And even though Rice technically rushed for over 100 yards with Marshall, they gave up 100, I don't remember, like 120-ish yards to Rice, but it was only about 2.8 or 2.9 yards per carry of the team. So Rice didn't beat them on the ground at all. I mean, they just racked up a lot of carries and a very little average per carry, less than 3 yards a carry. So, I mean, that didn't beat Marshall in that game. It's pretty obvious what beat Marshall that game. And I don't think that's going to happen again. So, I mean, if they just forget about that Rice game and just go back to how they were playing all year, and Marshall's definitely the team to beat in this game. I think they are, even if you think about that Rice game, Marshall's still the team to beat. So we'll see. But looking at Marshall offensively, I mean, we know what the Herd likes to do. They like to get their run game going. They did do a great job of that against Rice with a depleted O-line. Brendan Knox he hasn't had 100-plus yard game since I believe it was UMass. And so, like, it's been a couple games since he's gotten really good to that level. I mean, I think that, but it's going to be a little difficult in this game because UAB does have a good defense. I mean, they're one of the top 2 or 3 in the conference in total defense and points per game allowed defense. UAB's got a defense. There's no coincidence that arguably the 2 best defenses in this conference are playing for the championship. There's no coincidence there. So looking at Marshall's offense, I mean, we pretty much know what they're going to try to do. But Casey, what do you think the Herd offense is going to be able to do against UAB based on how UAB's defense has played this year?
Yeah, I think the run game will be back this week. From what I've seen on Twitter, I think the O-line is back. Everybody is back.
No, Lord.
So, to me, that is a good sign for Brendan Knox. I also want to give Brendan some slack. You mentioned that he hasn't had the best game since UMass. To be fair, against Middle Tennessee, Grant did throw 5 touchdowns. So, do with that what you want. I think you're going to see a little bit of everything Friday. We're going to be able to run the ball. We got the O-line back. We're going to be able to pass the football. I think we're going to see a little bit of normalcy from the Marshall offense, which is what we need. I don't think we need to see Brendan go off. I don't think we need to see Grant go off. I think all we need to see is a normal Marshall offense. Control the game. Don't turn the ball over. Play their game. So I hate to keep going back to the Rice game, but I think it's we kind of have to. The thing that cost us against Rice, even more so than the interceptions, was penalties. Penalties cost us, untimely penalties at that. I mean, And I never blame officiating. Even with officiating the way it was in the first half, we still were in a position to win the game in the second half. We just couldn't get it going. But I do want to say this. The first series of the game, Willie's wide open for a touchdown. He gets held pretty big, gets hooked. I mean, he's probably 10 feet in front of me. I can see him. He's getting hooked bigger than anything. They don't call it. Two things. One, if he doesn't get hooked, he catches it. It's a touchdown. Two, if they go off pass interference, we score on that drive. We're up 7-0. Who knows what happens from there?
Yep.
So to me, for the Marshall offense, find some normalcy. Get some drives going. Extend drives. Don't go 3 and out, and don't throw picks. And I hate to say that too, the throwing picks thing, because I've talked to you about it, about how I feel about some of those picks. Some of them were tipped. Talik was damn near tackled on the one. Besides all that, not even just picks, just no turnovers. Be smart. Don't no stupid penalties, nothing dumb like that. And the offense should be fine. Just be normal. Just be Marshall. Just be the Marshall offense. Play your game and go win a championship. That's what I feel like we need to see from Marshall Friday. Don't try to do too much.
Yep. That's it. I mean, if they can just play a clean game, then UAB's already behind the 8 ball right there. The Marshall's playing clean ball and they're not beating themselves, then they haven't lost this year. So I mean, it pretty much goes without saying. And like that was very uncharacteristic of Marshall and of Grant Wells to have that many turnovers, because I mean of course everybody knows pretty much at this point he only had 4 interceptions the whole year up to that point. So I mean, you can pretty much just throw that game. I mean, it's kind of an anomaly. It's clearly he's not going to throw 5 interceptions again. I mean, I don't see how there's any physical way he's going to throw 5 picks again. He's too poised of a quarterback. I think he'll bounce back. But yeah, to your point about when Willie Johnson got held there, that was a blatant missed pass interference or holding or whatever. It was a missed call.
I couldn't believe it.
Yes, it was terrible. I mean, it was easily a missed call. But not only that, but on that first, I think that was the first drive, when it was like 4th and 9 or 4th and 10, they hit Gammon for a 9 or 8, and he was 1 yard short, so like on 4th down. So I mean, if they ended up going down on that drive and scoring, it would probably talk about a whole different game. So there's little things like that really do go a long way. But I mean, I think that, like you said, if Marshall just play clean football, then they'll be in good shape here. But that remains to be seen. So now we start getting into a little bit more of keys to victory here. I mean, you gave a few there, or so to speak. I mean, a couple ideas at least. But I'll go ahead and get into the keys to victory here. I have a few. You have a few, I'm sure. So, Casey, what do you think the Herd has to do in this game to get a championship?
Okay, so there's a couple things. I want to make this clear. I've said many times that I've been on here that, I felt very confident in the game we were going into. I felt like we were much better than the other team. It's not that much different this week. I still think we're by far the better team. I do want to say UAB is a good football team, and they deserve respect for that. They definitely deserve respect for that. So before I say that, I wanted to make sure I said that. So my keys to victory this week for Marshall, they're pretty simple, and I touched on a couple of them, but it's one, no stupid penalties. No penalties. We've got to play a clean game. UAB is not Rice. UAB is not FAU. UAB is not Western Kentucky. UAB is UAB. They're a good coach team.
Right.
And they're a good group of guys that can play good football. So, with that said, no stupid penalties. To add on to that, no turnovers. You don't want to help these guys. It's not that they're better than us. It's not anything. But you don't want to help these guys. You don't even want to give them a chance. Play clean football. Secondly, on that, no matter what happens on the offensive side of the football, defense has to keep bringing it the way they have all year. The amount of respect I have for those guys on that side of the ball, no matter what, those guys go after every series with the intent of no first down, no yards, get the ball back. They have that killer instinct, and I love it. They've got to keep that, no matter what happens. Grant's a freshman. This is my next key to victory. Grant just needs to find himself again. Don't put so much pressure on himself. And I don't think that he is, by the way. I don't think he is. I think the last game, there's a lot of tip balls and stuff. 5 interceptions is 5 interceptions, but There's stories to that. There's reasons behind that. It wasn't just Grant just threw bad balls. Some of them were, but so Grant needs to be Grant. Grant needs to be himself. Go out there and have fun. Throw the ball around. Fling it around. I'd like to see him run the ball. I mean, he got it going a little bit. You know, his play action is crazy. The way he hides that ball, man, he just fakes everybody out. So there's another key to victory. Grant's got to be Grant. And my last key to victory is this. Offensive line. I'm not calling them out because, you know, they've been banged up. Offensive line is back this week. To everybody that called us pretenders, said we weren't legit, I hope that O-line comes out with a passion. Make the D-line feel it every snap of the game. Yep. UAB should be hurting. At halftime, they shouldn't be wanting to come back out. We got one of the best O-lines in the country. By far the best in the conference. Show that. Everyone doubted. Everyone said, oh, they're pretenders. They're pretenders. Show them why we're legit. Go out there and own the line of scrimmage. Those are my keys to victory for Marshall.
Well, to no surprise, a lot of those are basically a lot of the things I'm going to say are my keys to victory. But, I mean, to touch on that O-line a little bit more, yeah, there's no doubt that they weren't healthy against Rice. I mean, you were down Josh Ball and Will Ulmer, and then the game before that, you were down Cade Madden. I mean, there's been a lot of injuries lately with that O-line. So, I mean, if they are all back healthy, or at least most of them back, then right there gives you all the confidence you need in Marshall's ability to have success offensively. And don't forget either that there was a PFF article that came out, or a graphic on Twitter not long ago, said based on a lot of the advanced stats, Marshall had the 6th ranked O-line in the country. I mean, it's not by mistake. Marshall's O-line is absolutely filthy when they're healthy. So if they're healthy, if they're close to healthy, because they obviously weren't close to healthy against Rice, then Marshall's got a leg up right there that could lead through the whole game. But as far as my keys to victory, first thing I wrote down, you already hit on it, play smart. You've got to play smart. You can't. I mean, this is the game. UAB is not going to beat themselves. Really well coached. Bill Clark's been Conference USA Coach of the Year. He has stuck with this, with that program during its start days when they didn't have a program for a couple years. When they came back and became conference champions, he stuck with them through all of that, and he's an excellent coach. They're not going to beat themselves. So Marshall can't beat themselves in this game. They can't have 4 or 5 turnovers. They can't have, like you said, stupid penalties, unnecessary roughness, egregious pass interferences that don't need to happen. You just have to play smart from top to bottom, every aspect of the game, all sides of the ball. Just have to play smart. I mean, I'm not saying you can't have a penalty, but like you can't have 12 penalties, 130 yards in penalties, bunch of turnovers. That's just not going to work. So you got to play smart first and foremost in this game. My next point is, which honestly I didn't think I actually have to write this down any this year, but I have to for the last game. Grant Wells needs to play poised, and he's done an amazing job of that this year. That's one of the things that I said a lot about him this year is how poised he's played. And when something bad happens, he forgets about it and goes right back to work and makes up for it. That Rice game, after a couple picks, 1 or 2 picks, he didn't get over it. I mean, he was very erratic after that. He had obviously some bad passes. Like I said, not all of them were on him, clearly, but a lot of them were on him. So, I mean, he kind of lost his poise a bit in the game. And I just think it's going to happen again. I think with running game, hopefully getting back now, that'll take a lot of pressure off of him. With the O-line being healthy, that'll take a lot of pressure off of him. And that right there had a lot to do with his perceived lack of poise in the Rice game right there, with the fact that his O-line was banged up and his running game wasn't going. So if those 2 things are back, I think Grant Wells is going to play in control and play really well. So, but he has to play poised. You can't get rattled. I mean, this is a big stage, a conference championship at home for a freshman quarterback. It's a big stage, so he's going to play poised. Next point is win the trenches. We know what UAB is going to do. They're a physical football team. They got a lot of big, tough guys. Marshall's got a lot of tough guys. Hopefully healthier, tough guys now. So if they are out there and they win in the trenches like they've done all year, excluding the Rice game, then Marshall is absolutely head and shoulders above UAB if they're in the trenches, because I just don't see how. I mean, Marshall's healthy on defensive, offensive line. I don't think anybody can beat them in Conference USA. So if they can win the trenches, then Marshall right there has it sitting pretty. If they can just if they can do all the other things we're talking about, if they can just win the trenches, then they're in great shape here. And then my last point is we need a complete special team performance. I'm talking a championship caliber special team performance. And it's been a little bit iffier the last couple games. A lot of kickoffs out of bounds. I mean, a lot of just kind of bad stuff. Penalties on punt returns. Not very productive kickoff returns, which Sean Evans was out the last game, so that takes away some of it there. And punting, Lefevre was out the last game. So they need a complete special teams performance, from top to bottom. Every aspect of the special teams unit has to play well, in my opinion. I mean, that right there sometimes can be just enough to win or lose you the game. So if Marshall has great special teams, then I think they're in great shape. So they have to have, like I said, a complete special teams performance. I think would be big in this one. So looking now at the 200-proof player for the USA Championship game, Casey, who is your 200-proof player?
Yeah, it's Grant Wells. For a lot of reasons too. Like, I mean, I picked him last time, but I mean, it's much less on him performing out of this world to win the championship, and much more on. I think he just needs to bounce back. I think he just needs to have a game where he's himself and he's finding some success. So, for me, he obviously has to be good to win the game. It's important. So I guess that's who I would say I think is going to step up this week. He's not a guy that likes to fail, that's for sure. Yeah. And he's also not a guy that lives in the past. He's a week by week guy. Last week is not on his radar. So he's gonna come out, and I think he's gonna do some crazy stuff this week, and I'm pumped to watch it. So yeah, that's my guy. That's my guy this week.
I love the pick, and I almost picked him in this game. I actually, for the Charlotte preview that we put out, that of course the game didn't happen, he was my 200-proof player. But for this game right here, when I thought about it, this is the first guy that came to my mind, and I was like, you know what, this could be his shining moment in a Herd uniform, and he's had a lot of shining moments in a Herd uniform. I'm going with Tavante Beckett. I mean, this is a game, in my opinion, just tailor-made for him. I mean, Conference USA Championship game at home, Friday night, national TV. This is Tavante Beckett's moment right here. I mean, everybody knows how phenomenal a player he is. Got a great chance to play in the NFL. This is his senior year. It doesn't seem like he's coming back, considering he was one of only 4 guys that actually did get recognized on senior day. So it looks like this is his last go around with the Herd. I mean, this is it. This is his game right here. Conference title at home. This is what you. I mean, this is it right here. It's what you play for. He's going to play with a different level of intensity. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, to see him get close to 20 tackles in this game. I mean, if he plays, hell, of course, never want anybody to get hurt. But if barring any injuries or anything like that, I could see Tavante Beckett having a monster stat line in this game. I'm talking 15 plus tackles, maybe a sack or two. Hopefully a couple forced fumbles. He's good at those, so. Hopefully, just a couple TFLs. I want to see just a huge game from Tavante Beckett, and I expect to see that. I think this is the game right here that he just lives for this moment. So I'm going with Tavante Beckett. Now we get to the nitty-gritty of this whole thing. We have to get to score predictions. Can Marshall win their first conference championship since 2014, their second Conference USA title in program history? It's a big, big game, the biggest game Marshall's had in 6 years. So, Casey, what is your score prediction for this game?
Okay. So I've been thinking about this all day, because you told me that this was going to be in here, and I've been thinking about it. The line's 7. I don't necessarily agree with the line, but here's the thing, right? What did we beat LA Tech 26-23, right? In 2014? Yeah. It's going to be cold, man. It's going to be cold Friday night.
Yep.
I want to say Marshall bounces back and puts up points. So I've been leaning back and forth. I'm trying to keep 2014 in mind and how it was played. So I'm going to go Marshall 34, UAB 17. That's my score, and I want to be 100% clear. I'm not solid on it. I'm back and forth on what I think the score could be. So I landed there.
I like it. I mean, I want as comfortable of a win as possible. The close games are always great, but like it just does me. I'm so knotted up inside when it's a close game. My heart's pounding down my chest, and I mean that would definitely happen in this game. I mean, I remember 2014 well, and I was a nervous wreck most of that game, and Marshall pulled it out in the last couple minutes. So I mean,
that ending was nuts.
It was nuts. I mean, Cato to McManus finally, getting the lead there at the end, and then Neville Hewitt with the pick at the end. I mean, and then Cato almost dropping the snap. Yeah, he almost screwed it up on the kneel down. I was like, you got to be kidding me. But no, that's the Marshall way though. They always like making things interesting. So can't even expect anything less than that. But as far as my score prediction goes, going to preface it by saying I think UAB's a good team. They're, I don't know how good they are, really. I mean, I know that if you just look at their losses, I mean, they have one loss that's definitive. They lost to Miami, but that's Miami. They lost to them pretty good, but they lost to Louisiana, who's a very good Sun Belt team. They lost to them by 4 points, and then they lost to Louisiana Tech by 3 in like double overtime. So they could be right there with Marshall with only one loss, but I mean, they did lose the games, and they have won a couple, 2 or 3 games that have been close. So, I mean, I guess you could say their record's probably pretty accurate based on, everything. So they're 5-3. They're a good team, best team in the West. Obviously second best team in the conference so far this year. So they're a good team, but at the same time, I think Marshall's got too much to play for in this game. It's at home. They're going to have a good crowd. It's going to be exciting, very energized. I mean, this is what Marshall lives for. They live for these types of moments, and I just can't see them letting it go to waste. So I think they're going to bounce back. I think Marshall will win 27-17 over UAB. I think it's going to be a relatively lower scoring game. I mean, the cold might have something to do with that. Both teams have good defenses. So I could see it being, 27 points. I don't think it's going to be like necessarily a struggle to put up points, but I just don't think it's going to be one of those shootouts. I mean, if it is, so be it. I don't really care how it goes, just as long as Marshall gets the win. But I mean, I'll take it. But I mean, it'd be kind of cool if they won a close game again. But like, it just does my heart bad when they play in close games. So I just want to see them, take care of business and win. I mean, 10-point game isn't a blowout, but like, I'd like to see a little bit of comfort level with the margin, just because everybody was free on the edge of their seats the whole game. So Marshall 27-17, that's what I'm going to roll with. Hopefully they can get it done.
I like it.
Yeah, so we'll see. But we'll get into little final thoughts here. I mean, we've already said we said pretty much all we can say. I mean, it is what it is. It's a conference championship at home. I mean, what more can you want as a program than that? So Casey, what about some final thoughts?
So I've got 2 things. One, to any Western fans that watch this, good luck in the bowl game. I saw the bowl game got announced, so Good luck to you all. 2, to the Marshall fans listening. We have wanted this for a long, long time.
Yep.
A lot of us agree it's probably overdue.
Yeah.
With all that said, there is absolutely no excuse to not sell out a COVID sellout Friday night. Yep. It is going to be cold. I know it. It's going to be cold. I don't like it either. I'm going to be there. Put your layers on. Get to the Joan. It is very important that you show up, that you are as loud as you can be, and that you cheer these guys on. If anything, forget wins and losses, forget the championship. These kids did not go see their families for over 6 months to play this game for you all. So for them, please show up Friday night. Just cheer them on, give them support. They have more than earned it. Those are my final thoughts, Trace.
I couldn't have said it any better. I mean, what more as a fan base that demands pretty much demands Marshall to be playing for conference championships. What more could you want? You have a conference championship at home on a Friday night on national TV. I mean, if you don't show up to that game, then I don't really know what game you're going to show up to. I mean, I know you can only, they're only allowing 12,500, but like, come on. If you can get tickets to this game, or if you have tickets to this game, you have to go. You have to man up, so to speak, and go to this game. I mean, if this is the level that you expect Marshall to be at, and they're at the level of playing for a championship at home, and if you want them to continue to be at that level, you got to show up to games like this. You got to, I mean, that's just all there is to it. We as fans expect a lot out of the team. Well, the team should expect a lot of the fans to show up in this game as well. So absolutely, there needs to be not one available seat left in that stadium. No doubt about it.
My opinion is the fans cannot move the goalpost. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if our goalpost is winning a conference championship, we can't move the goalpost once we get to the conference championship. The only time we move the goalpost is when we win that damn conference championship. So show up Friday night, let's win the game, and let's move the goalpost again.
That's right. I got a piece of the 2014 goalpost right above my head up here. So I mean, that's still the coolest moment. That whole thing is still the coolest moment I've ever been to in Marshall football. So I was thinking it's going to be weird to see if they let people do that again based on the whole COVID thing. But I mean, they don't technically allow them to do it any year, but they do it every time. So hopefully
it's going to be wild. So I immediately thought of that, right? I watched 2014 back, and I've been watching that game a lot and using clips from it for this week.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, well, Notre Dame did it when they beat Clemson.
Yes.
So and by the way, I am not advocating to do that. I was just using a metaphor by saying that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Friday's going to be weird, Yeah. It's going to be different from any championship win. So I don't know. I just hope everybody comes and has a great time. That's more so what I care about.
Yep. Show up and support. That's the biggest thing. But plus, there's not going to be a whole lot of students probably there either. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it doesn't really matter as long as you get the win. That's all that matters.
Agreed.
But as far as my just brief final thoughts here, I wrote down a couple notes about their conference championship history, at least since rejoining FBS in 1997. They've had a lot of success in conference title games. I mean, they've won 6 out of the 8 conference title games that they played since 97, and all 6 were at home. They're 6-0 at home in conference title games. So they need to keep that streak alive here. I mean, if you're at home playing for the conference title, that's a game you need to win. And for the most part in Conference USA championship game history, the home team has won most every game. I think they've only lost maybe 4 or something like that. I don't remember what the article said, but the home team has the advantage here, especially Marshall, how good they've been all year. Just forget about the Rice game. I mean, the 2014 title game, they didn't play very good in the game, to be honest with you. They had 4 turnovers, but they managed to pull it out late. But that was a week after they lost to Western Kentucky in the game that we all know about. But so they lost to the Rice game before this game, so they should be able to bounce back. I mean, I think everybody expects that. I mean, it's a big one, so we'll see how it goes. But Casey, I appreciate you coming on. Did a great job like always. But hang with us on the other side of this break. Katie will come in with a special guest for the second half of the episode of the Conference USA Championship preview. So hang with us. It's the Moonshine Throwdown Podcast.
Clements looking, and the ball is loose, and it's a touchdown for Marshall.
What a play by Arnold Blackman, defensive end, comes around the corner, strips the pass, and they jump on it for a touchdown.
And then Rashad Myers finds the football.
Just what the doctor ordered.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown Podcast. Let's get into some of the particulars about this game. First of all, the game is going down Friday, December 18th at 7 p.m. Of course, the game is in Huntington, and if you can't make it to the game, then you can watch on CBS Sports Network, which is how I will have to consume this championship game. Let's talk about some generalities for this series. Marshall and UAB, first off, in this game, the power index kind of really likes Marshall. I'm not going to say they love them, but they kind of really like them. 67.9% chance to win for the Herd. Herd currently sets -5.5 as we record on Tuesday. The over-under is currently set at 42 if you're into that sort of thing. Let's talk about this all-time series between UAB and Marshall. Currently, 2020, UAB is a 5-3 ball club, 3-1 in conference. Marshall, of course, 7-1, 4-1 in conference. Their lone loss to Rice. The all-time series, though, Marshall just dominates it. 8-2 in favor of the Herd. Herd's won the last 2 in a row. These two teams haven't met since 2014, which was the last time that Marshall went to the Conference USA title game and ultimately hoisted the trophy. It was a 23-18 win for the Herd down in Birmingham in 2014. A couple of notes. Both of the losses for Marshall in this series came in Birmingham. So UAB has never won in Huntington. Herd lost in 2008 and then again in 2012. So, Huntington has not been friendly to the Blazers. We'll see if they can break that trend this week. But, the little bit of bias in me seems to think that Marshall, is a slight favorite. They are a really good team. They took one on the chin against Rice. Fully expect them to bounce back in a big way. We'll see who is and who isn't healthy. I haven't really heard that, but if the Herd's at full strength, you got to love their chances. Both schools are seeking their second Conference USA championship. UAB won it back in 2018, but this is their this will be their 4th consecutive trip, I believe, to the Conference USA title game. Maybe 3rd, I don't know, whatever. But they were able to hoist the trophy in 2018. They lost it last year at the hands of FAU. Marshall, of course, won it in 2014. They took a trip to the Conference USA title game in 2013 and lost to the aforementioned Rice Owls. That game, of course, took place in Texas. So Marshall's lone Conference USA title game in Huntington was a win for the Herd. The Herd is seeking their overall 14th conference title across multiple conferences. I remember in 2014 when they won the Conference USA title, they were the first team in the FBS to win conference titles in multiple FBS conferences. Of course, that was the MAC and then the Conference USA. So that's pretty cool feather in the cap. And UAB will be seeking just their 2nd overall conference title. And the first, of course, was the one in 2018 in Conference USA. We can talk about, a few things here. I'm going to talk about some players to look out for Marshall or for UAB, because look, Herd fans are going to want to know who to look for. And, I'm sure Trace and Casey are going to talk about that a little bit, but basically the stats don't really tell it, but it's kind of a run heavier type team. UAB is very balanced in their offensive attack. They're putting up 393 yards per game, 195 on the ground, 198 through the air. So the stats say, hey man, they're really balanced, but here's where the caveat comes in. Leading wide receiver for UAB, Austin Watkins, has opted out for the remainder of the season, so he will not be available for the Conference USA title game. So that makes a definite dent in their game plan. He was their leading receiver, both receptions and yardage wise, in the clubhouse. So that's going to make a big difference in the lethality of their passing game, I would imagine. But let's talk about some of those players you need to look out for. Now, I asked John, hey, who do you think we should be featuring? And he gave me the names of the guys. He's a lot closer to the program than we are. So I'm taking his advice and featuring the players offensively and defensively that he says. So let's talk about them. Quarterback, number 17, Tyler Johnson III, 6'2", 210-pound junior, 45 out of 75 on the year, 591 yards, 5 touchdowns versus 1 interception. Couple of running backs that will be both available for the game as of today. Unless something happens between now and Friday, both these guys are going to be playing, and it's a pretty good 1-2 punch for UAB. Running back number 4, Spencer Brown, the 6 foot, 220-pound senior, 156 carries on the year, 740 yards, 10 touchdowns on the ground. That's good for 4.7 yards per carry. And number 22, running back Dwayne McBride, the 5'11", 220-pounder. Only 39 carries on the year, but 396 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. 10.2 yards per carry. Good gracious. This is going to be a pretty vaunted rushing attack for UAB. And of course, we all know that strength on strength. Marshall doesn't give up a lot of rushing yards, but UAB probably I tend to think there'll be a little bit more run heavy than the stats indicate right now, just because of Watkins opting out. But we're going to feature some receivers as well. Wide receiver number 5, Myron Mitchell, 6'1", 180-pound senior, 27 catches, 423 yards, 3 touchdowns, good for 15.7 yards per reception. And number 35, wide receiver Samario Rudolph, the 5'9", 175-pound freshman. Look, just 2 catches for 46 yards. One of those went for a touchdown, 23 yards per reception. Look, I've got to default to John here. If he says feature Samario Rudolph and he's only got 2 catches on the year, I got to do that. So obviously there's something special going on. Maybe he's going to have an increased role that Watkins has now opted out. We'll see how that goes. All in all, UAB is putting up 393 yards per game and scoring 29.3 yards per game. Normally, this is where I would ask Trace, what would you expect to see Marshall do defensively? And I think by now we all know what Marshall does defensively, but I think we're going to have to drive the point home that Marshall has to get its run defense back right. They got it lit up a little bit at the hands of Rice. Granted, Rice rushed the ball over 45 times, but it was the first time all season Marshall had given up 100 yards to a team. That's going to have to get fixed and quick if you're going to have success against UAB. Spencer Brown, Dwayne McBride, good runners. Okay, they've got a really not really decent. They've got a really good offensive line in Birmingham as well. So you got to think a little bit of the emphasis, at least early on, is going to be on the run game for UAB. Whether it works or it doesn't, we'll see what in-game adjustments are made, but you got to think that it's going to be run heavy to start. So, Marshall defensively, you got to get back to, controlling the line of scrimmage from a defensive standpoint. You've got to get back to closing those running lanes. You got to be getting back to sound tackling, DBs or safeties, whatever, maybe playing a little bit closer to the line, something to, try to get those 3 and outs and get the ball back for your offense. As far as in the pass game, I don't really know what Marshall needs to do differently other than maybe take a step or 2 closer to the line and maybe, come off of that 8, 9, 10-yard cushion and shrink that down a little bit. I mean, if that's by design, then that's by design. But we've seen the Herd get exposed a little bit by that a little bit in recent weeks. So, this one's for all the marbles. You can't really afford to be giving up free yardage. So we'll see what the Herd does. But I expect to see the little bit more of a stingy Herd defense that we've been used to seeing. Defensively for the Blazers, number 6 linebacker Chris Mole, 6'2", 225-pound senior, 54 total tackles, 39 solo, 2 sacks, and 2 passes defended, leads the clubhouse for the Blazers. Number 22 linebacker Jordan Smith, get this, guys, 6'7", 255-pound linebacker. Gracious sakes. 36 tackles, 24 solo, 4.5 sacks, 1 interception, and 1 pass defended. Put a circle around that dude. You need to know where he's at. Number 21 safety Will Bowler, 6', 210-pound junior, 33 tackles, 24 of those solo, and 1 forced fumble in the year. And cornerback to be featured, number 1, Bronte Harris, a 5'10", 190-pound senior, 25 tackles, 21 solo, 1 sack, 1 interception, and 2 passes defended. And number 44, defensive lineman Antonio Moultrie, 6'4", 285-pound junior, 24 tackles, 14 of those solo, 1 interception, and 2 passes defended. Look, all in all, UAB allowing 316 yards. They give it up a little bit more in the air than they do on the ground. 177 yards through the air, just 138 on the ground. But look, we know what Marshall likes to do. We know also what they're capable of doing. UAB is allowing 22 points per game defensively. But look, the impact plays for me are kind of where UAB starts to shine. This might be something that Marshall will need to perk up on. 21 sacks as a team through 8 games, just shy of getting about 3 per game. 7 interceptions through 8 games, just shy of getting 1 per game. 7 forced fumbles and 6 fumble recoveries, just shy of getting 1 forced fumble per game. So they do a really good job of trying to turn you over. This is going to be a real key to victory because Marshall does the same things really well. But look, we know what Marshall does. So offensively, what am I expecting to see? Right off the bat, I'm expecting to see Tim Cramsey try to get Grant Wells into a little bit of a rhythm, because of the rough game he had against Rice. I fully expect him to focus more on the run game, just like UAB should. Brendan Knox, the best back in the conference for a reason. He needs to have a big day. He just needs to have a big day. And if this is the time that he has to show up and tote the ball 30 times, then he has to do that. We've said that over and over and over. But to me, look, let's talk about my points to victory. For the Herd to get a win in this game, number one, it's load up on the run defense. I think if you can shut those two runners down effectively, UAB as a team can go over 100 yards, but effectively, if you can shut them down, I think you've got enough of a defensive weapons to slow down the pass game. Right? That I just feel like if Marshall can stifle the run game of UAB, they're going to have a much easier path to victory. Number two for me, I just said it. I'm saying it again. You got to get a rhythm for Grant Wells going. It doesn't necessarily mean he's got to throw the ball 30 or 40 times, but he's got to get some confidence building throws. And to me, that screams throw the ball to Xavier Gaines. He was the only one that was making chunk yardage against Rice, and he only had 3 receptions. You got to get the guy more involved. He's just too much of a mismatch, period. Number 3, look, the game's in Huntington, and that means home field advantage. That means home crowd. That means you've got to take advantage of all that energy that's there. The Herd fans are going to be hyped, but you got to keep them engaged in the game. You've got to get big plays. You've got to get big stops, big hits, turnovers, whatever you got to do to keep the crowd engaged, because we all know that the home field advantage at Jones C. Edwards Stadium is a real thing, and it's one of the tougher places to play in America for a reason. So take full advantage of that. Number 4, it's in-game adjustments. We didn't really see any of that that was successful against Rice. And if we're going to see Marshall hoist a trophy, there's undoubtedly going to have to be in-game adjustments made, halftime adjustments made, and the guys are going to have to go with what works. Okay, this is not the time to reinvent the wheel. This is the time to stick with what works until it doesn't work. And if they can't stop you from getting 4 yards of carry, then there's no reason for Grant Wells to throw a pass, right? And and conversely, if you can't gain more than 2 yards of carry, well, you might have to try to put a little bit more pressure on Grant Wells to get it done. But those 4 things to me are Marshall's keys to victory. We'll see if the Herd can get it done. I'm going to welcome in John Duncan here in just a minute. And, we're going to get the UAB side of this. I've got some Marshall stats prepared. This is going to be good. So hang with us just a couple minutes. John will get in here and we'll get you going.
Lee is back punting with the win. And now I think Bill Clark, they're going to count to see if Middle Tennessee had 12 on the field.
Wow.
Is that how it's going to end?
No way.
Is that how it's going to end? Flag is down, and Middle Tennessee is flagged. We'll await the official word, but UAB celebrates an odd end if it is.
Illegal substitution. 12 men on the defense lined up in formation. 5-yard penalty. The result of the penalty is a first down UAB.
And with no timeouts, the Blazers with 1:05 can take a knee. And college football's Phoenix. The UAB Blazers, 2 years after they didn't have a program on this bizarre play, will win the Conference USA Championship.
All right, guys, joining me now is John Duncan, host of the Blazer Victory podcast. Follow them on Twitter at BlazerPod. He's joining us to give us the straight up UAB perspective of this Conference USA championship game. Like I told you in the intro, this is the first time we've had an opposing viewpoint on the show. Not on purpose, it just hasn't really worked out that way. We generally try to invite, Marshall guests, Western Kentucky guests, or whatever to talk, but this is a special circumstance. And I know John's got a lot of great information. He's going to be able to hit us with some game plan type stuff and what we should expect to see from UAB as they make their trip up to Huntington. He's also probably got the skinny on exactly who is and isn't available. Some information a lot of Herd fans will want to know about. So welcome to the show, John. Glad to have you. I'm glad we could squeeze this in. I'm looking forward to what you got to say, man.
What's up, man? Thank you so much, for having me on, and I definitely look forward to just talking ball with you.
Yeah, no doubt. This is always fun when I get somebody outside of our realm of fan bases. I enjoy like the Twitter conversations and stuff like that, but it's totally different as I know you're aware when you can actually get behind a microphone and talk in real time and hear the words and inflections and passions, and nothing is lost in translation on a keyboard. So what I'm going to do, man, is I'm going to give you those, impact players for Marshall, and then, talk to me about what we can expect to see UAB do versus what Marshall does well or doesn't do well. So, our listeners are familiar with our format. We generally do this every week, but we get to hear it from, how somebody's going to try to attack our team now versus how we're going to be attacking our team. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get her going.
Yeah, let's go, man. So schematically, UAB likes to do a lot of things that Marshall likes to do, where Marshall likes to get Brendan Knox going on the run game. UAB is definitely going to try to get Spencer Brown going, who should be back this week for Friday's matchup. He was out for the Rice game this past week, but fingers crossed, knocking on wood, so far he is ready to go this Friday night. And very talented freshman running back right behind him, Dwayne McBride, should be a good go, he should be ready to go this Friday night as well. So it'll be great to see, UAB having their best two running backs back for this game. And, UAB is just going to try to establish that line, ground and pound, get both of those guys going, and hopefully try to lull that Marshall secondary and try to hit them over the top. Now, I know it's going to be a lot more challenging this week as opposed to it was last week against Rice, facing a more talented Marshall secondary. But we'll see what happens, man. I definitely expect it to be a low-scoring game. I think the over-under is at 41. I expect it to be under that. I think it's going to be an old school type of ball game, man. Definitely low scoring, and both teams are going to try to get their run game established. And whichever team's able to get that running game going the best and is able to hold on to the ball definitely gets this win.
Yeah, I was. Let me make you happy there for a minute. As I was doing some, recording before I brought you on, I was also scrolling the Twitter timeline, and I saw that Coach Clark did in fact say that Spencer Brown and McBride will both be available as of right now for the game on Friday. Of course, it's just Tuesday. Anything can happen. You don't know what's going to happen between now and then. But as of right now, you can count on both those guys being in the UAB lineup, which I know has to bolster the offensive firepower for the Blazers. And you mentioned a lot of the things that I said, before you joined was UAB is going to probably try to do exactly what I thought they would do. This is a mirror image type team for Marshall. They both want to dominate at the line of scrimmage. They both want to focus on the run first, and there is enough passing firepower there to make things happen. I think Marshall, wants to do that a little bit more than UAB does. It seems like UAB relies more on the ground, even though the stats really don't say that. You're very balanced offensively, but the wild card I threw in there was the fact that Austin Watkins has now opted out for the remainder of the season, so he will be unavailable. And that was UAB's, well, I guess you would tell me if I'm right or wrong, primary offensive passing weapon, or receiving weapon. So that's got to change the philosophy a little bit, won't it?
No, yeah, you're spot on. He was our number one wide receiver. Now, we've still got some other guys that are talented, like Myron Mitchell, Samario Rudolph, who really stepped up in the Rice game. He's a walk-on guy, and he had a very key touchdown reception in the Rice game to help UAB get the win in Houston over Rice. But, yeah, losing Austin Watkins, especially this late in the year, I mean, that was a tough loss for UAB, for sure.
Yeah, I know that one stings. I've been following. You hear the name. I mean, we can't follow every team as closely as we follow our own teams, and I know you're the same way. But Austin Watkins is a name that continually gets put out there, so you can't help but pay attention to a guy like that because, well, he's productive, and the same goes for a guy like Spencer Brown. It seems like he's been at UAB for, I don't know, since the dawn of time, and it'll be nice to see him. I don't know. Is he coming back for another year? Maybe I shouldn't put the cart before the horse yet.
Well, I mean, he hasn't officially said, but we do know that he's going to be playing in the East-West Shrine game. So, I mean,
okay,
he's probably not coming back. But the guy behind him, Dwayne McBride, freshman, I mean, he might be just as good. So,
yeah, I featured him in my players to look out for UAB, and that 10.2 yards per carry really pops out at you. So that's I don't know. I mean, these guys look like measurables wise, they're basically mirror images of one another. 5'11" versus 6 foot, both 220. But
Right.
man, tough runners for sure. Look, let me feature some players for Marshall, and you know probably some of the guys that I'm going to feature because, well, they just kind of rank amongst the best at their positions in the conference. But there are going to be some guys you probably aren't as familiar with. And I want to bring those to light to the UAB fan base for any of those guys that are going to be listening to this. So, just guys you can put a circle around and perk up and know who might be making some plays. So let's start with the defensive side of the ball because we talked about UAB wanting to be run heavy, and we'll get some specific keys to victory here in a little bit. But I'm going to talk about 5 guys that, every UAB fan should know about. And if you don't know about number 4 linebacker Tavante Beckett, you have not been watching any Conference USA football for the past 2 seasons. He's the guy. He is the main cog that makes that Marshall defensive machine run. Number 4 linebacker Tavante Beckett. Learn the name, know the number. He will be in on just about every play. 5'10", 214-pound senior, 77 total tackles on the season, 29 solo, 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, and 1 pass defended. He just needs, one more fumble recovery to set Marshall's single season record. So I don't think, stuff like that doesn't play into his motivation, I doubt, but he just got a knack for finding the ball when it's on the ground. It's definitely one to be aware of. Moving on, number 24 linebacker Eli Neal. This is a guy that was on really nobody's radar coming in. He was a sophomore. Once the announcement that Jaquan Yulee wasn't going to be able to play this season, people started wondering, okay, who's going to be the guys to step up now? And Eli Neal has been a guy that's been a real bright spot for Marshall. 6'1", 240-pound sophomore, 58 total tackles, 17 solo, 1 sack, 1 interception, and 1 pass defended. Moving down to the defensive end spot, number 2, Darius Hodge, another guy that you should definitely know about. 6'2", 245-pound junior, 45 tackles, 15 solo, 6 sacks for Marshall, leads the way, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, and a pass defended. And a couple of guys in the defensive secondary. Number 8 safety Brandon Drayton. He's a real playmaker, guys. A big body too. 6'3", 210-pound senior, 37 tackles, 18 solo, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception, and 1 pass defended. He likes to play kind of close to around the line of scrimmage. So he's the guy that you can see in there trying to snuff out that run game. And number 3, defensive back Stephen Gilmore, arguably Marshall's best cover corner. I would tend to say that he is. I would imagine to see him lined up on your number 1 receiver, whether that's, I'm guessing that's probably going to be Mitchell. But the 5'11", 175-pound junior, 32 tackles, 20 solo, 1.5 sacks, 1 INT, 2 forced fumbles, and 6 passes defended. Look, John, as a whole, this Marshall defense is only giving up 253 yards a game. They give up 180 of that through the air. And, of course, the thing they hang their hat on is that rushing yards per game, 73 on average, which, of course, is, was tossed awry against Rice because Rice went over 100 on them for the first time all year. And the Herd defense is only allowing 11.4 points per game, also gone over 10 points at the hands of Rice. But still, it is what it is. Those impact plays that I talked about with UAB, what they do really well, Marshall also does really well. 24 team sacks, 4 INTs, 13 forced fumbles, and 9 fumble recoveries. Look, knowing what you know about Marshall and their defense, we talked about the commitment to the run game. We talked about what we think they will do. If it's not working, this is strength on strength. This is UAB's run game versus Marshall's run defense. What is the game? What is the backup plan if Spencer Brown and the guys can't get more than 2 yards a carry? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, to get the victory in Huntington, they're going to have to get Spencer and DeWayne McBride going. I don't know if there is a backup plan, but you definitely got to keep. If you're Brian Vincent, the offensive coordinator, you got to have some screens in your playbook. You've got to have to the running back and to the wide receiver. You got to hope that you can get some play action going. Maybe try to run some zone stretch plays to try to get it to the outside. But even on the outside, Marshall's really deep and talented. So and you say that, but on Marshall's end, but on UAB side, on defense, we're really good on defense as well. So these are the 2 probably most talented defenses in the conference going at each other. So that's why I definitely expect this to be a low scoring affair between the 2 schools. But I don't know. I really think whichever team is able to get that ground game established is definitely and can hold on to the ball is definitely going to get this victory.
Yeah, I mean that generally leads to success more often than not. But look, I mean it's odd to me. It's not really odd. It's just kind of dumbfounding that these teams are so alike. Both play great defense. Both are so run focused. Up until this Rice game, Grant Wells looked like he was playing far beyond his years, and then the dreaded 5 interception game popped up that nobody saw coming.
Right, because he only had 4 before then.
Right.
So, I
mean, I don't know. Were you able to watch like even the highlights of that game, during the course of your maybe Rice prep for your podcast?
Yes.
So if you saw what I saw, then you saw that every ball that got tipped didn't hit the ground. It landed into a Rice defender.
Yeah, kind of an unlucky day for Grant Wells for sure.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But look, let me feature some offensive guys to you. I talked about the 5 guys for this UAB defense. Of course, there are more, but I featured 5. The one that scares me to death is absolutely number 22 linebacker Jordan Smith. How you get 6'7", 255 to run with legit, field covering speed is kind of scary. But look, I'm going to feature some guys for you, and then you can tell me what do you think that UAB is going to be able to do. And of course, we talked about Grant Wells, the number 8 quarterback, 6'2", 210 freshman. 109 out of 181 on the year, 1,450 yards, 14 touches, 8 interceptions, 5 coming last game. We're going to need a big bounce back game from Grant Wells. 44 carries for 159 yards and 2 more touchdowns on the ground. He's kind of like sneaky, streaky when it comes to running. I mean, he's not going to look to run, but he will extend a play on you. Of course, everybody knows about number 20 running back Brendan Knox, the 6 foot, 223-pound junior, 168 carries, 820 yards, 9 touchdowns, good for almost 5 yards per carry. And here's where it gets tricky. Wide receivers, Marshall has a lot of them, but we don't know who's going to be available and who won't be available. The guys that I'm featuring, I tend to think will be because there have been no issues with these guys so far. But, there are a few other weapons that may or may not be able to make it. And it starts for me with number 11, Xavier Gaines, tight end, most versatile weapon in the entire conference, period. 6'3", 220-pound senior, 25 catches, 328 yards, 3 touchdowns. Good for 13.1 yards per carry, but look, Marshall will line him up at quarterback. They'll line him up in the slot. They'll line him up out wide. They will hand the ball off to him. You have no idea what, even Herd fans don't, what's coming game in and game out for Gaines. The one thing that rings true is he is being vastly underutilized in the latter half of this season. So we'll see if that changes. Number 7, wide receiver Corey Gamage. He's the big one. 6'4", 227-pound sophomore, 27 catches, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns. Coming on really strong late. He's having a better latter half of the season than the beginning half of the season. It's turning into a really formidable weapon for opposing secondaries. And number 1, wide receiver Willie Johnson, another guy that's been in Huntington, well, basically since the dawn of time. 6 foot, 176-pound senior, 17 catches, 239 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Willie's like Xavier Gaines in the fact that they will run him around the edges. They'll do those end arounds, jet sweeps, that type of stuff with Willie. He's also he can return kicks and punts. He just doesn't normally now, but you can't put it out of the realm of possibility. So it's a guy you got to put a spotlight around. Marshall has a whole 424 yards of offense per game, 190 yards on the ground, 234 through the air, and scoring 32.8 points per game. Look, we kind of know what we think the game plan will be for Marshall. What do you think UAB is going to try to do defensively? We know where Marshall's holes are, where they've been picked apart in places, and where the lapses in coverage come. What can Herd fans expect to see UAB try to do to counteract this Marshall offense?
Just put pressure on Grant Wells. I mean, that is your number one game plan for the UAB defense, is just try to make him as uncomfortable as possible in the pocket. We don't like to look up a whole lot into that last game against Rice because the 7 games prior to that, Marshall looked unbeatable pretty much. But that Rice game was really, really weird. I got to watch that game a couple of times before we did our Rice prep. It's just so weird seeing him throw those 5 interceptions, and really Rice wasn't doing a whole lot other than just mixing up their coverages and just putting pressure on Wells. And I think UAB has a hell of a lot better defensive line than Rice does. So we're just going to hope that we can just somehow get in the pocket and disrupt everything and just make Wells uncomfortable and just hope that he makes some mistakes. Now, I don't think he's going to throw 5 interceptions again, but if we can force him into 1 or 2, I definitely like UAB's chances. UAB's really strong in the secondary with Bronte Harris and company. So I think we can play a little man defense on Marshall for a little bit, but we're definitely going to mix it up and go zone and just try to mix up our coverages and blitz packages and just try to make Wells as uncomfortable as possible. But you can definitely expect UAB, like other teams have done, FAU, Rice, other teams, put people in the box and stop Brendan Knox. Because if Knox gets going, if he gets over 100 yards, I don't think UAB has a chance.
Well, that's been a little bit of a bugaboo for the Herd lately. He hasn't gone over 100 yards in the last couple of games. But you talked about putting pressure on Grant Wells, and Rice was really able to do that more so than other teams. And the main driver for that was that Marshall was without 2 starting offensive linemen. Marshall holds all that injury news and stuff like that close to the vest. I don't imagine that we'll see any of it until, the guys trot out there on Friday or moments before the media might start tweeting out such and such isn't dressed, such and such isn't active. But the absence of Will Ulmer and Josh Ball specifically, you're talking about 6'8", 300 and whatever, 50, 60, 70. I don't know what he's big.
He's a big guy. Yeah.
He's a legit NFL prospect for a reason. So, losing that it's a definite reason that there was more penetration getting to Grant Wells. But look, if those guys are back and they can get back to controlling the line of scrimmage like they have the previous 7 games, then this is going to be a tough road to hoe for UAB. And I'm not saying it can't happen, but you are absolutely correct in saying that Grant Wells will not throw another 5 interceptions, because I would tend to think if he gets to 2 or 3, they're probably going to shut down. They're not going to pull him, but I bet they're going to shut down the long pass plays. You'll see more running and more, quick passes, but I digress. So look, let's talk about some specific keys to victory. Give me those 4 bullet points that you think UAB absolutely must do to go up to Huntington and get this win and hoist that trophy.
Yeah, well, number 1 is no turnovers. I really think if UAB has more than 1 turnover, then we're definitely going to lose this ball game. Look, you look at the starting quarterback for UAB, Tyler Johnston. He's only played in a couple games this year because he's been hurt, had shoulder issues. But, he started against Rice this past game and threw for 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Now, it's not a whole lot, not a whole lot of yardage, but he was able to take care of the ball. You go back to last year, I'm sure if any Western Kentucky fans remember the game last year up in Bowling Green, Tyler Johnston threw, I think, 3, 4 interceptions. I think it was 3. But you look at that game. You look at the Tennessee game last year. You look at the App State game last year. Just so many games that UAB lost just throwing interceptions with Tyler Johnston. He's just going to have to be smart with his decision-making and for UAB to have a shot. So that's definitely number 1. Number 2 is stop Brendan Knox. But like I said before, another reason UAB could lose this game is if Brendan Knox gets going for over 100 yards. Now, luckily, as you just said, he's had some issues the last couple of games getting over that 100 yards. So hopefully UAB will be prepared for that. And UAB fans, Knox is going to get some plays. He's going to break out 10, 15-yard runs every now and then. Hopefully not many of them, but he's going to break some. He's talented. He's one of the most talented running backs in this league, if not the talented. But I definitely put him up there with UTSA, Sincere McCormick, and, of course, Spencer Brown at UAB. Number 3 would be just don't give up the big plays. You go back to last year's Conference USA Championship when UAB went to Boca to face FAU. Just gave up so many big plays, and UAB was really out of that game really quickly because of all those big plays. Marshall's going to hit some, but it's just you can't give up too many of them, or you're definitely going to find yourself in a big hole really quickly in Huntington. Let me see. That was 3, right? Was that 2 or 3? That was 3. Okay. Last one is just, I don't know, just be confident, man. UAB, this team has faced so much adversity this year. Just, before the Rice game, losing those 2 games in a row, really 2 games UAB should have won. The Louisiana Lafayette game and the Louisiana Tech game. Just hard losses and then coming back, but not being able to play for 42 days. That is a long layoff since the Louisiana Tech game, not playing for 42 days, and then finally, coming into the Rice game, only dressing out 40-ish scholarship players and just having to rely on a lot of walk-ons, but just finding a way to have that grit and that just championship mentality that Bill Clark has instilled in this program since he's came to the South Side in Birmingham, and just finding a way to win and just be confident. And the one thing I'm sure, that we hit on in our preview for the Marshall game, UAB players, they're not used to playing in the cold, man. I mean, it's going to be cold in Huntington. So I think it's going to be in the low 30s, high 20s. I mean, that's going to be cold at night too. So that's one thing to look for. Now, I do know that Doc Holliday loves and recruits well in the Florida area. So there could be a lot of Florida guys there too, but they've already had a few cold games. So that's definitely going to be something to watch for how UAB players react in the cold.
Well, that's something I didn't really consider, and that's true. Marshall does recruit heavily in Florida, but those guys by now know that you're going to have to play in the cold. All the guys that are the usual suspects for the Herd that have been key contributors for a number of years, or even, have been there more than 1 year, they know they're going to play in the cold. But look, Let me ask you this is the one thing. Why will UAB win? What is it? Specifically, why will they go into Huntington and win over a really good Marshall team, a team that we haven't seen this good since 2014, really since the last time UAB and Marshall played? This is the best team Marshall has fielded since 2014. Why will UAB win?
Oh, now I'm thinking about Rakeem Cato in 2014. Thanks. Don't bring up those memories. But UAB, if they're able to not turn the ball over and Spencer Brown gets over 100 yards, UAB wins. Now, UAB's never won in Huntington. I believe Marshall leads the all-time series 8-2, but UAB's never won up there. So it's something we haven't done, but it's just that feeling, man. I think Bill Clark, I think these guys have a shot at getting that victory.
Yeah. Look, when you talk about her Conference USA coaches, Bill Clark's got to be at the top of everybody's list. I mean, he is, if not the best in-game coach and, program managing coach. I mean, who else could bring, a program back from almost ground zero, I mean,
right.
Really only Marshall has been at a lower ground zero talking about rebuilding a program. They had to do it from scratch. So, but in this day and age, from having no program to now, what is this, the third consecutive or fourth consecutive West Division title or something like that? I mean,
third, yeah.
This is pretty impressive stuff. This is definitely rarefied air for UAB. I talked earlier that, they're seeking their second overall conference title ever. So this is kind of big stuff. Marshall's kind of been there, done that, but it hasn't been in a long time. There a whole series of kids have come through Huntington, graduated, and then moved on between conference titles. That's a big disconnect, So.
Right.
Let me tell you why I think Marshall will win. And we've touched on this in other episodes and in passing and talking. Marshall doesn't raise the Conference USA trophy. This season is a wash, period. All the rankings, all the, hoopla and the, stats, this season is a wash. If you go 7-0 and then lose your last two and can't hoist a trophy, it's a wash. It all means nothing. The wins just count for having joy that particular Saturday and looking forward to the next week. It's all about championships. And if you say in Huntington, we play for championships, when you're in a championship game, you better win it. So that's why I think Marshall will win. This has to happen in order for the season to ultimately mean something. Now let's talk about the 200 proof player. I kind of alluded to that in our messages coming on. 200 proof player for us is the impactful player. That's what we try to keep a little bit of a moonshine theme, and 200 proof would mean 100% alcohol, which would be the total on fire player. So who is your 200 proof player for the Conference USA championship game?
Honestly, I'm probably going to surprise a lot of UAB listeners, but I'm going to say Tyler Johnson at quarterback. I know a lot of people were probably thinking that I would say Spencer Brown or Jordan Smith, somebody, but really Tyler Johnston is the key to getting this victory for UAB. I mean, if he can play well, play like he did Rice, don't force any balls, don't try to do too much, and just do your job and just no interceptions. I think he is critical on UAB possibly trying to get this victory in the Conference USA Championship. So definitely watch for him and see how he reacts on the road in Huntington.
Yeah, it'll definitely be even though limited attendance it'll still be a very high energy environment. Jones C. Edwards Stadium is a tough place to play for a reason. Rice just got him a win in there, which is something that doesn't happen. But if the crowd gets engaged and the crowd stays pumped, look out. It's a tough place to play. For me, my 200 proof player is Brendan Knox. Probably not surprising too many people. I could have gone a number of different ways. I was really thinking Tavonte Beckett this week. I was thinking, could it be Grant Wells in a bounce back game? But ultimately I landed on Brendan Knox. And a lot of that goes to the fact that the Charlotte game was canceled. And I picked Brendan Knox to be my 200 proof player against Charlotte. And the reason for that is he hasn't gone off in a while and he's just flat due. And in a championship game at home, and he hasn't put up the numbers that he likes to put up or Herd fans are used to seeing him put up lately, I feel like this just is the recipe for a signature Brendan Knox type of game. If this boils down to the type of slugfest that we kind of think it will be, Brendan Knox might have to tote the ball 30, 35 times. And if he has to do that, then he has to do that. If it's not working for Grant Wells and it's going to fall on the shoulders of the O-line and Brendan Knox, then so be it. I think he's up to the task. So give me Brendan Knox, well over 100. I won't say he'll get to $150, but I like him to circle around that 120, 130 mark if they commit to him and he's able to make some big plays. What do you got for a score prediction, John? I know you think this is going to be a tight one, but what do you got?
Yes, I mean, like I said earlier, I definitely think this is going to be a low-scoring affair between these two teams. I'm going to sound like a homer, but I actually think UAB is going to come out of Huntington with the victory, 21-14. A low-scoring affair, and just somehow, some way, UAB pulls it out.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not being a homer. If you think your team's going to win, then you think they're going to win, right? You're supposed to. You don't have to come on our show and pick the Herd. That would be insane.
Yeah, well, a lot of your listeners are like, oh, of course, UAB guy comes on and picks UAB.
Well, of course you're going to. Why wouldn't you? You follow the team closer than anybody that we would relate to. So they're a good team, guys. If there's any Herd fan out there that just witnessed the sleepwalking through the Rice game and then thinks you're going to come in and handle UAB, you're sorely mistaken. This is going to take Marshall's probably best effort all year, or at least their best, most charged effort since Appalachian State came in. That was a really hard-fought game, 14-7, if you'll remember. I like it to be a little bit more high-scoring. I'm picking 27-20, the Herd. And the only reason I'm stopping at 20 is because Marshall has yet to give up 21 points in a game, and I think they're going to continue that streak. So give me the Herd 27-20, not giving up 21 points to any opponent all season long. John, it was really awesome that you could squeeze in the time to come on the show. Really appreciate it. I'm sure Marshall fans appreciate the UAB perspective. I hope if any of your fan base decides to listen to our show that they'll appreciate a little bit of what we bring to the table as well. But look, it's final thoughts time, and this is your time on our show to say whatever you want. It can or can't be UAB related. It doesn't matter. If you've got a message to get out, please do that.
Well, to be honest, I'm sure like everybody else is, I'm just really ready for this 2020 year to be over with and just hope we get back to some sort of normalcy for the 2021 football season. I know it's been hard. A lot of fans haven't been able to go to the games due to either being at risk or just, completely understandable not, wanting to put themselves at risk. But definitely just hope next year we're able to get back to some sort of normalcy for everybody's sake, but definitely for college football's sake. This has been a weird year with all the cancellations, opt-outs. Marshall has dealt with that. UAB's dealt with that. I just hope that, I'm going to be encouraging and just say next year is going to be a better year for everybody.
Yeah. Tip of the cap to that sentiment as well. Once again, I got John Duncan, host of Blazer Victory Podcast. Follow him on Twitter at BlazerPod. I'm sure that they have got lots of good info leading into Conference USA Championship game as well. Look, the last thing I'm going to say is I actually went to Legion Field one time back in 2008, which was one of the losses that Marshall had. I was training for work down in Atlanta. My dad was working over in Alabama, and I wanted to go spend some time with my dad. Just so happened that Marshall was playing UAB, and I was like, "Hey, I didn't know that. Let's go to the game." He said, "Okay." Happened to be homecoming at UAB, and I watched the Blazers beat Marshall. So, hey, I guess I'm glad I won't be in attendance for the Conference USA Championship game. I'll be down here in somewhat sunny Florida watching on CBS Sports Network, along with a lot of other folks. But I'm going to drive this one last point home. I said it many times on Twitter, and I'm going to say it again. If anybody goes to the game, and if Marshall happens to win the game, and if they take the goalpost down, I will compensate you very well for someone who gets me a big chunk of the goalpost, because that would be awesome. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed Trace's and Casey's segment. John, I had a lot of fun with you. We'll do this again. You've always got the open invite on the show anytime you want to come back and talk UAB. So until next time, we'll see you next week. Go Herd, go Tops. It's the Moonshine Throwdown Podcast. Later.